Silicon Valley is gearing up to let lots of people go. In fact, they've already let tens of thousands of folks go over the course of the last few months. Is this the second big tech bubble burst that we've had? Sure looks like it, and let's dive in, because there are a lot of stories to cover and a lot of quotes from a lot of people that we should be listening to. Let's look at these numbers. Here we go. Let's start here on this Tech Tuesday video and just say that the stories that have been subtly buried as to all the job layoffs that have been going on by a lot of tech firms, well, they're not so subtle anymore. A lot of them are out there in the open. The volume of these reports has been increasing, and starting as early as Thursday last week, they started going wide to, mainstream sources, right? First up, of course, is the CNN story about the balance of power shifting and starting to erode some of the progress that tech has made as far as the jobs market. In a piece that looks like something that you would consider actual journalism, which is surprising from CNN, they go on to talk about the practices that have created an overbloated and overvalued tech industry. In fact, some very specific companies are referenced over the course of this piece. And of course, they have far too many people working in jobs that they just don't need. Bill McHargue of Talent House is actually quoted in this article, of course this was from an interview, that the hiring was off the charts and paying salaries that were probably too high or out of range, where companies would hire 4 or 5 people in a sales position when they really only needed 1 or 2. While this exuberance was a boon for employees, it may have led to a house of cards. The industries are cooling off quite quickly if you've been paying attention to the stock market. And again, Wall Street's scrutiny can be rather harsh indeed. Companies like Netflix and Coinbase have announced layoffs, of course, in recent weeks. Those were pretty well publicized. I think Netflix is over 450 in the last couple of months. But you also have others announcing cost cutting, things like Uber and Lyft and Snap and Twitter and Apple, some of the darlings of the tech boom that we've had over the course of the last few years. Now, they are resetting the way that they go about things by merely slowing or pausing their hiring, at least according to the story. McHargue is also quoted again stating they're not going to hire as many people. They're going to do much more due diligence when they hire people. The interview process is going to take a lot longer, and the compensation is going to get a little softer. Those are his words, not mine. In fact, he goes on to say, I think it's time to get back to some realistic numbers. I think the correction was going to happen, and now we just don't know how long it's going to last. Well, I've been talking about that broadly for quite some period of time when it comes to the economic situation, especially macroeconomic situation. Globally, we're headed into, or already are in, and I would say we already are in a recession, but we'll get to that in just a moment, because believe me, there's more to this story. I just want to say first off to Mr. McHargue. He says specifically that there's a need for due diligence, at least in the hiring process, and I agree. I can only imagine that this will actually include an avoidance of hiring activist employees who offer very little outside of their activism. To that end, the story goes on to quote Mr. Mark Zuckerberg in a very surprising way from a Q&A session that he had with employees at the beginning of July, the first week of July, in fact. He says specifically, realistically, there are probably a bunch of people at the company who shouldn't be here. Part of my hope is that in raising expectations and having more aggressive goals and just turning up the heat a little bit is that some of you will decide that this place isn't for you. and that sort of self-selection is okay with me. Interesting take there, Mr. Zuckerberg. And I'm quite surprised. That's coming right out of his mouth at his holier-than-thou employees there at Meta. And that had to be a shock. Those people probably had to, take a moment in a quiet space to figure things out. But as you've heard, he's not the only one. We've seen many examples of this recently. The Tesla CEO, Elon Musk, is also cited in this particular article. It's specifically about his ultimatum to employees returning to the office for 40 hours of a work week. Probably solid business in his particular industry rather than, trusting people to work from home. And that's a big amount of trust you have to have. This comes at odds with the growing worker activism as cited by the article itself. Paraphrasing from it, I'm going to say this. Spurred on by the global crisis, employees began advocating for their own interests, including their own comfort level with being, or returning to an office situation. Yvonne Hitchinson, founder of the very woke inclusion consultancy firm Ready Set, says the demand for tech and knowledge workers is still global, and there's still a shortfall. So I think that workers that don't want to go back into that environment aren't going to go. And maybe she's right, I don't know. Of course, this person is turning a blind eye to the actual financial realities of this moment, and of course of the future, because of the big R word. Remote work is described in the article as a double-edged sword, and I fully agree. So does Nick Bloom, who is a professor of economics at Stanford University. And he's quoted in the article saying the following: "As we enter a recession, tech firms will tighten belts, cutting back on office space." That makes sense. "Moving to hire workers outside of big cities and abroad." This seems familiar. "This will include outsourcing more work to other countries, destroying the tech industry jobs in the US all over again, just after we got a whole new sector of tech back in the United States." Cyclical indeed. So how does that customer service dog whistle malarkey work for you now? Not very well. We're going to return to very poor customer service in the very near future, beyond what we already come to expect, which is a low bar already. But I digress, and we'll move on. Just to provide more background, let's take a pretty deep look into the graphic that we have here from Crunchbase. It brings all of this into stark reality. If you look at the tens of thousands of jobs that are listed here as they scroll by, well, there are going to be even more on the way. If you look at Oracle, which should, set some expectations here for what you can expect in the future. In this article from CRN, they're preparing to roll out $1 billion in cuts and bring in thousands and thousands of layoffs. Holy cow. Of course, some of this, let's be fair, is driven by the acquisition of the Cerner for $28 billion, which is got Oracle diving way deeper into healthcare than I'm comfortable with. In fact, I'm incredibly uncomfortable with that. Of course, we also have issues around cybersecurity, because new cybersecurity startups are laying off workers already, and so are their well-established competitors, such as companies like IronNet. Yeah, they're laying off 70% of their staff. Probably not a good time to do that, considering all the cyber issues we've had lately. But looks like they're gonna be forced to do it. So all of this culminates here. History may not actually be repeating itself exactly, but when it comes to the tech bubble burst, well, it's certainly rhyming right now. But hey, what do you think? Do you think we are about to see further collapse in tech? I do. Does this look and feel like another tech bubble burst? I think so. Is it a coincidence that tech and media are having the same kinds of woes at exactly the same time? No, at least in my opinion. So what is yours? Please utilize the comment section down below, and let's have a conversation, because I'm quite interested in what you think. Also, be sure to support other independent content creators here on the platform, or anywhere that you can find them. Let's get them out there front and center in an electronic world that is always trying to gatekeep them from success. And of course, they're always trying to ensure the success of the corrupted corporate content creators that exist here on this platform and elsewhere. And, well, let's fight that. Let's fight that by liking, sharing, subscribing to their channels. Let's go ahead and, make the comments that drive the algorithms, because it really does work, especially here on my channel, and I always appreciate it. I like the conversation. I hope you do too. And with that being said, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others. Wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And until next time, bye.
Thanks for visiting today. Be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can, as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.